Hello, everyone. I'm back again, Minister James Moss, and we're here with continuing education, and we're still in the book of Acts. All right, but we're pushing along. We're in chapter 21. We're covering verses 26 through 36, and this one is entitled "Paul is Arrested." You're like, yeah. So what? What's new? you know, every time we turn around, Paul's arrested. What? Yeah, exactly. Hey, we're going to get right to it, okay? All jokes aside. But we're going to go from verse. I just want to make sure that I have everything marked that I need to, where I need to stop. You know how it is when you get old. You get, the mind tends to wander and you get caught up in it. It's like, oh, man, I was supposed to stop 15 scriptures ago. Yeah. Okay. All right. So here we go. All right. Paul's attempt to placate his enemies was an utter failure. A group of Jews from Asia spotted him in the temple and incited a crowd to seize him. Dead set in their determination to reject the message of salvation in Christ, these opponents of Paul refused to look objectively at the facts. Instead, they whipped the mob into a frenzy by making a series of false and highly inflammatory accusations against the apostle. Only the quick action of a detachment of Roman soldiers saved Paul from being beaten to death. Wow. All right, so here we go. Come with us. It's for your safety. Then Paul took the men, and the next day, purifying himself with them, entered into the temple to signify the accomplishments of the days of purification, until that an offering should be offered for every one of them. And when the 7 days were almost ended, the Jews which were of Asia, when they saw him in the temple, stirred up all the people and laid hands on him, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man that teacheth all men everywhere against the people and the law and this place, and further brought Greeks also into the temple, and hath polluted this holy place." For they had seen before with him in the city, Trophimus, an Ephesian, whom they supposed that Paul had brought into the temple. And all the city was moved, and the people ran together, and they took Paul and drew him out of the temple, and forthwith the doors were shut. And as they went about to kill him, tidings came unto the chief captain of the band that all Jerusalem was in an uproar, who immediately took soldiers and centurions and ran down unto them. And when they saw the chief captain and the soldiers, they left beating of Paul. Then the chief captain came near and took him and commanded him to be bound with 2 chains, and demanded who he was and what he had done. And some cried one thing, some another among the multitude. And when he could not know the certainty for the tumult, he commanded him to be carried to the castle. And when he came upon the stairs, so it was that he was borne of the soldiers for the violence of the people. For the multitude of the people followed after, crying, "Away with him." Okay, sounds familiar? Crucify him, away with him. Okay. And isn't it funny how one person can sit here and stir up a mob? Wow, that is like being easily persuaded. Wow. Okay, here we go. Verses 26 through 29. Paul's agreement to their request was a sign of his greatness. In submission to their political sensitivity, he paid for a ceremony in order to appease the religious zealots. He went through the purification ritual with 4 others and proceeded to the temple. But Paul's gracious action appeased none of his detractors. The opposition appears to have come from unbelieving Jews from Asia who recognized him in the temple during the time of his completion of the purification ritual. These Jews present for Pentecost must have recognized Paul from his ministry in their area. Since they recognized Trophimus, they likely were from Ephesus and may have even been a part of the riot there. These Jews roused a mob that began to shout against Paul. Contrary to their emotional accusation, Paul had not been teaching against the Jews or telling everybody to disobey the Jewish laws, nor had he spoken against the temple. The pinnacle of this argument was the accusation that Paul had brought Gentiles into the temple. Luke explained that the Jewish accusers had seen Paul in the city with Trophimus, whom they knew to be a Gentile. Then, without any investigation whatsoever, they assumed Paul had taken him into the temple, reporting this as if it had actually happened. Verses 30 and 31. The city was thrown into an uproar, and a great riot followed. In mob-like fashion, Paul was dragged out of the temple, and the gates were closed behind him. These were the gates between the inner court and the court of the Gentiles. The temple guards shut the gates to prevent the mob from coming inside. How ironic that the final scene at the temple in the book of Acts is the gates slamming shut to keep Paul out. Evidently, the mob probably was going to try to beat him or stone him to death. Because Jerusalem was under Roman control, an uproar in the city would quickly be investigated by Roman authorities. The commander of the Roman regiment at this time was Claudius Lysias. All right, verses 32 and 33. Lysias called out his soldiers and officers. The quick action of Lysias and the close proximity of the garrison were all that saved Paul's life. The seizing of Paul by the crowd was superseded by the seizing of Paul by the Roman soldiers. Paul actually was fortunate to be arrested and bound. Luke, ever the one for details, wrote that Paul was bound with 2 chains. The chains handcuffed him to a Roman officer on each side. This would be normal treatment for a criminal. After seizing Paul, the commander asked the crowd who chained the man and what crime he had committed. Verses 34 through 36, the commander could not get a direct answer because the crowd could not agree on what the issues were. Of course, that had not stopped them in their murderous course a few moments earlier. Because the commander could not find out the truth, he ordered Paul to be taken to the fortress, probably the safest place for the apostle in all of Jerusalem. This was the fortress of Antonia, built by Herod the Great, to defend the temple area. It was located northwest of the temple and connected by stairs to the court of the Gentiles. The fortress housed nearly 1,000 soldiers. In the process of moving their prisoner, the mob, supposedly seeing the object of their anger being safely whisked away, grew so violent that Paul had to be carried by the soldiers. The murderous mob pursued, all the while shouting, "Kill him, kill him." These were almost identical to the words another murderous crowd had shouted to Pontius Pilate concerning Jesus of Nazareth just a few decades earlier. And I told you, I don't pre-read these commentaries, but you see that. Okay, enough said. But that wraps up this particular video. It's about to get interesting because all of this is part of Paul's destiny. And you see, he narrowly escaped with his life there, but God knew that, okay, I'm going to protect him. Okay, I'm going to get him where I need him to be. All right, so God bless you. God keep you, and thank you so much for supporting our ministry and all that we do. Thank you for watching these videos and putting up with me. Sometimes maybe I'm mispronouncing words, and definitely I'm stumbling from time to time. Could be old age, Y'all be patient with me. All right, and I'll be patient with you, of course. Of course. And if you at any time want to reach out to me, I am available. You can reach out to me on our website or on our Facebook page, and we can connect from there, and we can go from there. Until the next time, God bless you, God keep you, and by all means, continue to keep studying. God bless you.